Good morning, everyone. You are listening to Be the Change on WLTK-DB.com, Paranormal Talk Radio. My name is Kristina Bloom, and I'm your host. Welcome. Today, we are going to be talking about everybody's favorite topic, money. I know, right? Weird place to talk about money, but we are going to be talking about money. We're going to be talking about a lot of things that have to do with that. And speaking of money, I'm going to give myself a little bit of a plug here. If you are looking to get an excellent psychic reading, you can contact me through my contact page on KristinaBloom.com. All right, enough of that. So we're going to be meeting with a socially responsible investor today. He's a financial advisor with FFG, and he invests money for other people in responsible ways, socially responsible ways. So we're going to be talking about that, and we're also going to be talking about the frequency of money, and that's where I'm going to start today, is talking about the frequency of abundance and prosperity. And if you've been in that flow or you are in that flow, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you're having trouble getting to that flow, I totally understand. This has been a lifetime journey for me. And I still go in and out of the flow. And it really is an energy flow. It's a mindset. It's a feeling of peace and allowing and releasing resistance. And all of those things sound great until you go to do it and you don't have a clue how. So I'm going to share a little bit of my journey today, but I'm also going to talk about how our emotional state, how we feel about ourselves, what our spiritual beliefs are, can either get in the way of our abundance or enhance our abundance. And working in the spiritual realm for the last 20 years in this, I'm going to call it an industry, there's a kind of an underlying idea that spiritual people shouldn't have money. Spiritual people are not supposed to have abundance, which I think is ridiculous because spiritual people actually share the abundance more than non-spiritual people. But there does seem to be this weird underlying thing that it's not okay to make money if you're spiritual. And I would like to just nip that one right in the bud, because we have families to support too. And I know that I've seen a lot of this going around the internet over the years. But the bottom line is, we don't get out of being human. We don't get out of these human bodies because we are walking a spiritual path. We don't get out of having to pay our bills and feed our kids and keep a roof over our heads and whatnot. So with that, I would like to help out those of you who sometimes struggle with keeping that cash flow going. Being self-employed, which is what a lot of us are, self-employed, or at least partially self-employed, it can be tough. It can be tough to keep that mindset of abundance just flows and staying in gratitude when you're not quite sure how you're going to make the rent or your car payment or whatever it is. So staying in the frequency of abundance is something that I have worked on through not just the law of attraction, but the other 11 universal laws as well. And I will be doing a show on that coming up soon too, the 12 universal laws. And one of them, well, all of them basically come down to staying in the flow. How do you stay in the flow? How do you keep your energy open? And it doesn't necessarily even mean staying super positive all the time. It is a matter of staying open and just allowing and understanding that there's ebb and flow to everything. I would like to also just talk about the socially responsible part of investing. If you are fortunate enough to have enough money to invest, where's your money going? Do you even know? A lot of people have portfolios either through their work or they just hire a financial advisor and they don't know where their money's going. They don't know what exactly they're investing in because we don't often ask those questions. And I don't know why we don't ask those. I think it's kind of like why we go to doctors and get pills and don't ask about that either. But that's next week. So we'll talk about that next week. Excuse me. We collectively, and to a lesser extent individually, I'm reading my notes here. Sorry if I'm looking down. We choose what's available in the free market by how we spend our money. And that's whether we're investing or purchasing or whatever we're doing. We vote with our money, everything. We vote everything. McDonald's is a huge worldwide corporation because so many people vote with their dollars by eating at McDonald's. It's that simple. Are we in alignment with where we're spending our money? If you're in alignment with eating there, good for you. I hope you're healthy. But when we're not in alignment with where we're spending our money, then we're spending our money on things that are not moving our society forward in a healthy, happy way. So, it's really important that we really know ourselves and we really pay attention to what we're doing. And if we're eating healthy and we're supporting local farmers, and if we're supporting local businesses with our purchases for our gifts, our groceries, whatever, then we're putting money back into the community, and that's a good investment, even if you don't have a portfolio. Is it more expensive? Yes. And if you can't afford it, it's okay. Don't beat yourself up over it. We've all been there, or at least a lot of us have been there. But really, energy flows where attention goes. So if you're focused on, I always have a constant flow of money and I can take care of my family very easily, I can feed my family well, and you keep that energy like that, then the money just somehow manages to appear. Whether it's through clients, whether it's through extra hours at work or a bonus, or someone gives you a gift, whatever it is, if you can keep it open, if you can just keep that line of energy open, that it's always going to be there, I'm always taken care of. And that was a real struggle for me to get to that place. So if you're struggling with that, I really completely understand. That is a difficult place to get to when you're stuck in a very different place of lack and fear and uncertainty and just really not knowing where it's coming from. Mental energy, emotional energy, spiritual energy, financial energy, physical energy, it all goes where your attention is. So what are we thinking about? What are we thinking about? That's really the bottom line. What are we thinking? What are we feeling? And how is that affecting the rest of our lives in all of these different areas? When I know that I am well taken care of, that my physical needs are taken care of, it is much easier for me to meditate. It's much easier for me to stay in a good place emotionally and spiritually. When you're struggling, it's harder. And believe me, I am not telling you you're doing something wrong if you're struggling, because it is difficult. We did not choose an easy planet to be on, and we didn't choose an easy time to be here. But we're here, and we're here for a reason. So whatever that reason is for you, I hope that you are able to find it and that you are able to move forward with getting to where you want to be. To a great extent, how we understand our spiritual values, whether that's religious or non-religious, how we understand our spiritual values affects the quality of our life. And the quality of our life in this society is very much affected by the resources that we have, financial resources to get the other resources that we need, like food, shelter, transportation. And how it's, oh, wow. This is a lot. Thank you for bearing with me. Our ideals that we hold to a great extent determines how we manage, invest, and spend our money. So if we are in a really okay place financially, and I don't necessarily mean millionaire, billionaire, rich, but in an okay place where, we know we're not going to starve. There's food in the refrigerator. There is a refrigerator. How we feel about ourselves very much determines how we're going to spend our financial resources and where that money is going to go. And the more socially and spiritually conscious we are, the more we will make deliberate choices. And the more deliberate choices that we make, that the more we're going to affect our society now and in the future. If you're fortunate enough to be in a position to buy a fuel, an economy car that gets good fuel economy, if we do that, if we are able to do that and we are spending less money on gas, maybe we have an electric car, maybe we have a hybrid electric gas car. if we're fortunate enough to be in a position to be able to do that, then we've made a socially conscious choice by doing that. And I was thinking as I was getting ready for the show today that the young adults now, the millennials and the Gen Y, as we're calling them, are so much more environmentally conscious than those of us who grew up in the 1970s and 80s. We had the big muscle cars that got, 7 miles to the gallon, the big trucks going mudding, and I know that that still happens, but I grew up in northern Wisconsin where we were surrounded by beautiful nature and it seemed like no one really cared about it. And now there's conservancy. Now there's more caring about the environment, and it's more on a personal level that people are caring about the environment, especially the last 2 years, since leaving your house pretty much meant going out in the wilderness for a lot of people. It's an important thing to be able to take the resources that we have, no matter how much or how little, to invest it in a way, either through investments or through the way that we spend our money. It's important that we are conscious about how we're doing it. And that's really the whole point that I'm trying to make here, is how conscious are we in the way that we are spending our resources? How conscious are we in the way that we are raising our children to care about the environment? We have a beautiful country that we live in here in the United States. And I visited most of the parts of the country, at least regionally. And we have everything from deserts to marshlands to mountains to lakes. It's beautiful. We live in a beautiful country. And I am really grateful that so many more people are understanding how beautiful our country is. I am seeing actually less litter along highways than I used to. To me, that speaks to social consciousness. We have social consciousness in the way that we're eating, I hope. Yeah, well, sometimes. Sometimes we still go with junk food, but there's more choices available, and more choices available at more price ranges. When we have discount grocers like Aldi, where we can still get fresh produce, and where we can, I have shopped at Aldi since my kids were little. That's a long time ago. And I was reading labels then. And, the generic foods that were in cans, and I don't eat canned vegetables anymore, but when my kids were little, the generic ones were better. They didn't have all the chemicals in it. I would compare a label of a generic can of, say, green beans to a brand name can of green beans, and the brand name would have all these different things in it I couldn't even pronounce. Well, why spend extra money for chemicals? Never made sense to me. We are in the season now of farmers markets in most parts of the country. If you can go to a farmers market or a roadside stand and you can support a local farmer, please do it. These people are working really hard to provide healthy food for the rest of us. So show them your appreciation by going there rather than going to whatever your local grocery store is to get produce. There are so many ways that we can just consciously move forward with what we have, that we can take what we have and spend it in a way that makes more sense, for our future. Education. What kind of education are we giving our kids if we're sending them to school to learn, but we're not demonstrating at home how to take care of the place that they're going to live in the future? There's a lot of things that are involved in living consciously and spending consciously and investing consciously. And our guest today is hopefully going to enlighten us with some of his ideas. He's not just a financial advisor. His name is James Cox, and he is also a Ramdas devotee. He's been walking a spiritual path for decades, and he's a friend of mine. We have a good friend in common who I'm pretty sure is probably listening. So hi, Coop. There's just, I'm really looking forward to bringing him on because he has so many insights to how we can live better. And with that, we are going to take a break. We'll be right back.
Looking to launch your new masterpiece? Then try something new with Moonbow Publishing and Publications. At Moonbow, we have a strong desire to serve authors in a powerful and meaningful way. After all, you've poured your heart and soul into your writing, and we fully understand and respect that. Remember this: you will own the copyright to your work. You will have the final say on your work before published. Even after all of that, we've saved the best for last. We won't take a percentage sold. Nope, not a penny. Excited about MoonbowPublications.com yet? We thought so. Take advantage of our company's services like book editing, formatting, and covers, publishing, and photography. Moonbow Publishing and Publications has everything you're looking for in a company. Remember, we will not keep any commissions. We are a boutique publishing company focusing on spiritual, health and wellness, and personal growth genres. So come and see what we can do for you at MoonbowPublications.com. That's MoonbowPublications.com. Moonbow Publications, a new kind of publishing company.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. It's 15 minutes past the hour, and I would like to bring on now our guest for today. His name is James Cox. Hi, Jim.
Hey, Kristina. Thanks for
How
having
are you
me.
doing? You're well. Are we going to do this the whole time?
What's that? Talk at the same time? Probably.
Yes. So, Jim, why don't we start out with your disclaimer, because I know that you have to make a public disclaimer because of the work that you do. So go ahead with that, and then we'll start chatting.
I do. I appreciate that. My name is James Cox. I'm a financial advisor with First Financial Group and Park Avenue Securities. I'm also an agent of Guardian Life Insurance. Few compliance notices. This show is for informational purposes only, and individual situations may vary, and that the information should be relied upon only when coordinated with individual professional advice. This discussion does not constitute an offer or a solicitation of a profit or a product or a service. This is my opinion and not necessarily that of Guardian or Park Avenue Securities. And I need to remind listeners that I am not a legal or tax advisor, and they should consult their own legal or tax advisors. That's it.
Awesome. We covered all the bases.
All the bases.
Excellent. So why don't you tell us what socially responsible investing means in the investment world?
Well, I thought that your introduction really did, your piece that you did really hit on a lot of key issues. And you know, socially responsible investing means different things to different people. You know, at the end of the day, it's really about an individual has to figure out what's important to them. You know, where do they want to see the world? What do they want to see the world look like in 10 or 20 years? You know, you have to figure out what your money is doing and, you know, how it can do good, how it can do better. And that's probably the hardest part of socially responsible investing is kind of having a client or having somebody go through that interior journey of exploration, you know, being able to really dissect what's important to them and, you know, grapple with the fact that, you know, they need to make a change, you know, for the planet, for society, for, you know, their heirs. So socially responsible investing to me really focuses in on climate change. You know, my focus is really in terms of divestment from fossil fuels and also from banks, which really assist in funding the work of fossil fuel companies, big oil, big coal, number of other industries. But we're dealing with a climate crisis, and it's a crisis that by and large is generated by 100 corporations. And those corporations, in a sense, are pillaging and destroying the environment and really not addressing their responsibility to society. And it wasn't always like that. I think things have really changed in the past 50 years, really since the advent of Milton Friedman and Reagan in the late 70s, early 80s. Capitalism changed to more of a focus on shareholder capitalism, which really ignores the aspect of other stakeholders, such as labor, such as society, such as consumers. And, part of socially responsible investing is saying, I choose not to support the work that a particular company does, and I'm not going to let them work with my money. I'm not going to invest my dollar in their stock or their bonds, and they're going to have to go somewhere else. And the reality is that it works. Before COVID, divestment was really hurting the fossil fuel industry. And you saw a lot of fossil fuel companies going bankrupt, going down. In a way, COVID and the extraordinary measures that the government enacted was a life preserver for a lot of companies, but especially for fossil fuels. And they've kind of gotten a second life, so to speak. So, people have to be diligent. And ultimately, it's their ability to say, with their IRA, that they don't want their money invested in particular things. And, my work is really to help people make those choices and to do it proactively, but then also to invest in things that are changing the world for the better. Where is society moving, and what's going to be, what's going to give society a better outlook 10 or 20 years from now? What's that more positive vision? So.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything that you're saying. It was unfortunate that the fossil fuel industry got the boost rather than the renewable energy industry. I feel like, though, as investors ourselves and as citizens, that we can go, wait a minute, back it up, pull my money out of there. Let's start reinvesting over here again into the renewable resources. And it's interesting to me that, I don't know, maybe because you're an investor, you invest what you do, you live in kind of a different world than maybe a lot of America does, where a lot of people that I know wouldn't even know where to begin. Like, we wouldn't even know where to begin to find out where our employer is putting our money.
Mm-hmm.
As far as, the IRAs or whatever that we might get through employers. How do we even approach getting that information? Like, where would we even look for that?
Well, I think a great starting point, obviously the internet is a font of information. So the starting point really is, if you have a 401k, for example, you have your money invested in different mutual funds. What you can do is go to Yahoo Finance and put in the name of that mutual fund or the ticker. There's usually a 5-letter identification for that mutual fund. You put in that information into Yahoo Finance, and it pulls up the mutual fund. If you go to holdings, basically what's actually inside that company, you can see exactly where their top 10 holdings are. And it gives you a lot of insight into their philosophy, or maybe lack of philosophy.
Right.
But that's a good starting place, and I think a lot of people would be surprised when you go through that process, what exactly your 401k is supporting. Once you do that, and there are also other websites where you can figure out the green rating or the sustainability rating. And you have to take it with a grain of salt, because obviously different rating systems emphasize different things. And also you have to be aware of greenwashing. There's a lot of information out there that is also distributed by supporters of fossil fuels that basically water down information that expose a company or mutual fund or investment exposures to fossil fuel risk. And actually, that's a good point. So why is fossil fuel a risk? It's not just the fact that it's affecting the environment and carbon dioxide buildup is creating climate change and all of these massive weather changes that we're seeing. But there's also risk as an investment. One of the risks to fossil fuels is, as society moves from fossil fuels to sustainable renewable energies, what you end up is with companies that have sunken assets, basically assets that are worthless. And if you're holding the paper, if you're invested in a company that, declines in terms of its worth, the price of that stock is going to go down. Your savings are going to suffer because of that. And so ultimately, you want to put yourself in a place where you're invested in companies with assets that are appreciating instead of going down. And so, that's part of the financial risk that, my point of view is, not only am I doing what I'm doing because it's the right thing for the planet, but I'm all about risk management. Like a lot of the things you talked about in your introduction,
Mhm.
I'm all for, like the idea of growing your own food or eating food that is good for you. I mean, ultimately, that's reducing your risk, your healthcare risk, right?
Right.
Because people that eat healthier ultimately don't have a lot of the medical issues that people who have poor diets suffer from, especially later in life. And so you're basically putting yourself in a better long-term financial position as well, because you're taking care of your health proactively.
Right.
So, I think this idea of managing risk is really key in terms of people understanding it's not just the right thing or the green thing, but it makes common sense.
It really does. It really does. Even when we do boil it down to eating healthier, buying local, it reduces a lot of risk in the future, but it also reduces immediate risk in, if we don't support our local businesses, they're not going to be there.
Yeah.
If we don't support our small farmers, they're not going to be there because they are not going to be able to survive without our support. And it's a symbiotic relationship. We pay them, they feed us. It works. It
Hmm.
keeps everyone going. And boiling that down to more local, I realize that in investments, it's probably not very easy to support local, or maybe even not even possible. I don't know, because I don't know much about it. Straight up, I don't know much about it. That's why I'm talking to you.
Hmm.
So, um, you said, there's like 100 companies in the world that are basically running things. So, how do we determine when we are going, even just to make purchases, who owns what? I mean, like, where does this web end? I,
I
I
think Yeah, that's a great question because there's so many mergers that take place in terms of larger companies gobbling up smaller companies in order to grow themselves. And so a lot of times you'll see, for example, a large conglomerate own a brand. Let's say you start out liking it, and I'm not going to name names, but
Right.
let's say you like a small consumer brand that really speaks to you. It's local. It really kind of hits all the buttons in terms of building a local economy, sustainability, using local produce or local distributors, and supporting its workforce and taking care of its people. Good benefits, good pay, that type of thing. But then the company gets bought out by a large conglomerate. And, a lot, not all the time, but a lot of times, one of the ways that the conglomerate will improve quote unquote profitability is they'll make changes to that fundamental culture that made that company appealing to you.
Right.
And so it kind of changes the DNA, so to speak, of what you were purchasing and why you were purchasing it. And a lot of times people aren't aware of that. They continue on because it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of awareness and kind of a determination that takes time to implement. And obviously, time is a precious resource that most people don't have a lot of time in excess of. We're trying to support ourselves in our daily lives. We got kids to cart around to soccer games, and we have things that we have to complete at work, that we finish at work, finish at home, even though you know maybe we shouldn't. In the past days we didn't, but it seems to be expected these days. So we're bringing work home, and it's just we run out of time. But at the same time, once you make these discoveries, you know they can stick with you and they can have a meaningful impact. And obviously, if you share these things over social media and educate your friends, um, I think that's a big way that people can do that. I mean, the more that you can help other people understand, or you can share that knowledge with, in terms of being more sustainable, being more conscious,
Right.
that it helps the whole.
It really does. And I agree. You've worked all day. You come home, you have to pick the kids up from daycare or after school programs, and then you have to go to this practice or that practice and make dinner. Who really has time to do the research in most households? And I completely agree with what you're saying there. I do like the idea of sharing on social media. I've actually gotten some snippets from social media that gives me a clue on where to do more research.
Mm-hmm.
Not that we should take everything on social media at face value by any means, but it can give you the opportunity to go looking for more information.
Exactly.
Definitely.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Social media it's a double-edged sword for sure.
It
And
is. It is. But by the same token, the blessing of social media is that we connect to people that, obviously are part of our, let's say, soul pod, our soul family, that we otherwise never would have connected to 50 years ago. And so
absolutely.
that's a blessing. And so there's an enlargement of that circle in a time when we need, more community, more connectedness.
Right. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I know that without social media, you and I would not have connected.
No, no.
I wouldn't have connected with this radio station where I'm doing the show. There's social media is a great connector as long as we can just stop arguing. That's just really the thing, isn't it? Just
It
just
is.
be nice, just be kind to each other. Um, I know that. Can you talk to us? Are you well comfortable talking with us about your connection with Ramdas and what you've learned there and how that affects how you do your job?
Yeah, I learned about Ramdas, I guess, 8 or 9 years ago, and over this time, we went to, I don't know, like 8 or 9 of the retreats in Maui to actually spend time with him, see him, be in that community, and it was a real blessing. But the ideas that he talked about from the 60s through the 70s, 80s, I mean, it's the same message throughout. And it's this kind of awareness of our souls, I guess, and consciousness that there's something more, that um, being present instead of chasing after what we need to do in the future or worrying about things that happened in the past, just be here now. And it's relieving in a way of a lot of anxiety. I think that people ask me, I think I'm kind of chill. I'm pretty chill, at least I'm told that. And it's like, how, like, you deal with like this, let's say, the climate crisis. I'm like, how can you be so chill? And I guess that's basically how, like that attitude of be here now, of being able to understand the larger vision of things in terms of the universe and how it's unfolding, and kind of finding within that universe, what's my role? And I feel like my role is to, save as many people as possible in the work that I do, quote unquote. So, I try to help them in terms of their investments and making good decisions, and, my knowledge with how things work inside the system, to try to help them reduce risk. And so it's been a blessing. And honestly, I would say I'm a completely different person than I was 10 years ago. It really has been a fundamental change. But at the same time, I was on that path 10 years ago. I was on that path 20 years ago. I just, I started out being interested in the Gnostics. I'm a big fan of existentialism. I think that, with actions and behaviors comes responsibility and obligation, and you have to accept, if you're going to do something, you're going to have to understand that it's going to have some sort of consequence. And when I went to my first retreat, and when I heard my first Ramdas lecture or talk on a CD, it's like I'm home. I just felt so comfortable, because it's that same mentality. But ultimately, that mentality also starts with the idea that you have to know yourself. You have to go through that internal journey of figuring out who you are and who you want to be, in order to, you know, be on the correct path, the path that
Right.
you're supposed to be.
In
So,
order to show up in the world in a meaningful way.
yeah.
Absolutely. And that inner journey, I think, is it's part of the human condition. It's almost like, okay, we decided to come here on this planet at this time in this body so that we could have this journey to really figure some things out. And when we can take what we figured out and we can take what we know to be true for ourselves and put it forward into the community in any way, whether that's how we make purchases, how we talk to people, how we invest our money, whatever we do, to be able to show up in a meaningful way, it's really important to take that inner journey.
Hmm.
And I am seeing more people in the last 2 years taking that journey. Some of them, whether they wanted to or not, some of them went, oh, I finally have time to do this. I'm going to do this now. So it's been a real pleasure for me in what I do to help people along that journey so that they can get to the point where they can say, okay, this is how I want to show up in the world. This is how I want to be conscious moving forward. And I really appreciate what you say, because I am right there with everything you said. Everything you said. And honestly, I'd never read or listened to anything of Ramdas until I met you.
Really?
And then, right. Yeah. And then I listened to some of his things on YouTube and I'm like, oh yeah, that. Oh yeah.
Well, it's funny.
Yeah.
One of the funny things was after the first retreat, when I came back, we had gone in December, November, December. And usually in January, it's, people are trying to get started back up. It's after New Year's, and, people are kind of getting back into the work groove. And so in January, that year, I was doing meetings with different people, and I would go out and talk to somebody. And they're like, oh, what did you do over the holiday? And you're just catching up. What did you do over the holidays? Oh, I took a trip. Oh, where'd you go? I went to Maui. I went to a retreat. And they're like, oh, what kind of retreat? And I went to see Ramdas. And they were like, Ramdas? I love Ramdas. And this is like somebody that you would never think even knew who Ramdas was.
Right.
And it happened time after time after time. And it was astounding to me, because it became clear, like, his influence on society was so much greater than I think is given credit for.
Oh, I agree.
I mean, so many people that you would never think would know anything about Ramdas, or, that line of bhakti yoga and Hinduism and selfless service, that whole philosophy, that it's had a huge impact on society. And,
very much so.
it really is a blessing.
Right. I've been hearing the name for years. I just never bothered to look him up.
Yeah.
It's out there. It's out there. I actually, if I said Ramdas to almost anybody, probably maybe over the age of 25, they'd all know who he was.
Yeah.
Or at least have some idea that he was some sort of a spiritual teacher.
And that's one of the interesting things too, is like one of the things I noticed during the later retreats is the population of the retreat. In the beginning, the retreats were almost all exclusively people 50 and up, 45 and up. And at the end of the retreats, it was pretty much 50-50, people under 25 and people over 45. So
awesome.
At the end, there was this huge influx of young people. And so you talk about, young people being more environmentally conscious. I mean, I see that with my son, being more spiritually conscious,
Right.
and a lot of young people. And I definitely think that there's this wave building where they're so much farther along the path than I was at that age, which is
both of my kids too. Yeah.
Yeah.
My kids are both in their 20s, and they are so much further along than I was at that age.
Mm-hmm.
So much further. It's amazing to me. It's you still see it where it's like, oh, kids these days, blah, 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 blah. You know what? I think that was valid when I was a kid. I don't know that it's so valid now.
Yeah.
No,
I agree.
This generation in their 20s, 30s, and younger, they just seem to know more than we do. They just seem to be more psychically in tune, spiritually in tune. I'm not sure which words to put on it, but they are definitely much more aware of consequences. And they're more aware of, if I live my life this way, that's going to be a problem for someone else. I mean, I came up in the me generation of the 80s, and my generation did not do this world any favors, and we're just going to leave it at that.
Well, I'm in that same generation, so I know what you mean.
Yeah, we just didn't do anyone any favors. But I'm watching, people in their 20s these days, and I agree with you. They're not all about chasing the almighty dollar.
No.
Like our generation was. They're stopping and they're going, okay, I need enough to live on, and I need enough to, be able to go get coffee or whatever. I don't need to be stockpiling.
Yeah. No, it's impressive, and I mean, in a lot of ways, I think it's changing the economy. The fact that a lot of young people are choosing not to go to college, are choosing to kind of go more of on a journey in younger years and figure out things for themselves, I think is a positive. I used to think, that was a negative, that everybody had to go to college. But honestly, the debt load that comes from college is not doing anybody a service.
Right.
So I think there's a lot to be said for, building your own path, finding your own way.
Yeah. I'm seeing a lot of younger people owning their own businesses.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
really embracing the gig economy.
Yeah.
And taking advantage of that. And I think that that's a pretty marvelous thing.
Yeah. And we need more entrepreneurship. I mean, if anything has hurt the economy more than anything else, it's the fact that I think large corporations, conglomerates, have basically destroyed, I think, entrepreneurship by people who could have in the past started their own business, done something where, they could start their own shop, on Main Street. They could, start just some business where they have a particular talent. And, a lot of those things have been gobbled up by companies like, an online retailer.
Right.
So,
we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, let's return to this line of thinking.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks. We'll be right back.
Two intuitive books, one amazing author. Intuitive You. Psychic and Personal Development by Kristina Bloom. We all have the ability to tune into our sixth sense, the realm of intuition. Whether your intuition presents as a gut feeling or full psychic ability, Intuitive You will help you to fully embrace how your intuition works. Let's not forget about Kristina's newest book, Wisdom for the Age of Ascension, Channeled Messages from Divine Intelligence. Wisdom for the Age of Ascension is an updated and expanded second release of Kristina's first book, The Contemplative Truth. Kristina has expanded her reach to more light beings, enabling more information to be channeled to you, the reader. Wisdom for the Age of Ascension and Intuitive You by Kristina Bloom. Get your copies today or visit moonbowpublications.com. That's moonbowpublications.com.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. It is 49 minutes past the hour. I'd like to welcome back our guest, James Cox. And we were just talking about entrepreneurship and how so many younger people are involved in the gig economy. And I know I have a virtual assistant. I know I'm not her only client. And I love that because she keeps very busy because I don't have enough to keep her busy full time. So I think it's great when so many people are stepping up and doing that sort of thing. So I'm going to kind of take this in a little bit different direction and ask you, how do you feel like the entrepreneurship, the gig economy that's now starting to thrive in this country is going to affect investments down the road?
Wow, that's a curveball.
It just came up from our conversation. Sorry about the curveball.
No, not at all. Not at all. I think the big issue is really, the economy is changing and labor is changing. And one of the issues is how are we going to support ourselves? And I think at the end of the day, I was just saying, I see a lot of kids not going to college, and they should take their. By the same token, education is key, I think, going forward, but not just education in terms of a technical sense, but creative education.
Right.
I think the creative aspect of an awareness of the interconnectedness of things is really where the opportunity is in terms of the economy going forward. And I say this especially with the gig economy in mind, because if you're, let's say, a marketer or a graphic designer, or things which incorporate the ability to be creative but also add value to other businesses, that it has a lot more impact, and it's a lot more meaningful.
Mhm.
But being creative is really key going forward. And the sad truth is a lot of education in, you know, K through 12 has gotten away from creativity. We've gotten rid of a lot of music classes, a lot of art classes. Um, I mean, even in college, I didn't I didn't take any art classes, and I went to a liberal arts school, which is, I look back, is sad, because I actually paint now. I've been doing watercolors for over 10 years, but it's like I missed out on that part in school. And I feel like I could have, if I would have had a different mindset, I would
Mhm.
have had a head start to that. So, creativity is key, I think, in the gig economy going forward. That being said, there's a lot of downside risk to the gig economy. I mean, being
Mhm.
an Uber driver, um, and any kind of driver, you're basically trading off the wear and tear on your car, and the corporation is benefiting from that.
Right.
And so you're taking on their risk and their downside, and you have to, I think, more effectively evaluate, is this worth it? And I see people kind of pushed into those choices
Right.
without really evaluating in kind of a cost benefit analysis. Does this really make sense? And so I'm troubled by that. I do see that it's an opportunity, but you have to do it of your own volition. And I think a lot of people do not have that choice in the matter, where it's more a matter of survival than it is choice. Although I've met plenty of drivers where they're enjoying it, and they
Right.
kind of do it on the side. They get out and they do a couple of hours, and you know, usually have the best conversations with them also. So it's beneficial in that regard.
Right.
So I think you just have to be aware of that kind of financial aspect to the relationship, to make sure that it's going to be beneficial for you.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm also seeing a lot of people doing their own startups,
Hmm.
not necessarily going with something like Uber or DoorDash or something like that. Where I am seeing a lot of people who are just like, I'm a virtual assistant. I can do Excel. I can do your newsletters. I can do that sort of thing. And I'm seeing those people who are actually really thriving in this
Hmm.
because of people like me who don't want to do that.
Well, there's only so much time in the day also.
Exactly.
And when you do have like really good skills, and you can prove that with what you do,
Hmm.
you should be rewarded for that. You should be compensated for that. And I think that's a good
Absolutely.
thing.
I agree. I agree. This has been a really enlightening conversation, James. I want to thank you for taking the time. I know you had to take some time out of your workday to be here, and I really appreciate that. You can find James' blog at jamesAcox.com. And is there any other information that you wanted to share as far as how people can get a hold of you for investment advice or to invest with you? Or
Yeah, I mean, if they have any questions, I mean, feel free to reach out to me. My email is james.cox@ffgadvisors.com. But yeah, check out my blog. I also do a podcast. It's called Human Insights with James Cox. Um, and actually, as of today, I started another podcast called Sowing the Seeds of Love. It's actually a spiritual podcast. So
nice.
those are kind of outside the realm of the work that I do, but, it's
You know,
conversations.
I'm just going to I'm going to address that because I feel like if the last 2 years have been about anything, it's about bringing the spiritual into our lives
Hmm.
instead of keeping them separate.
Yeah.
So I would much rather work with someone in a financial field like you, who is a spiritual person, who is not quiet about being a spiritual person, and who is someone that I feel I could trust. Right.
I,
So I feel like this whole thing has not been about a virus. It's not been about taking anybody's freedoms away. It's been about bringing spirituality into our daily lives and living it and not just setting it aside for an hour on Saturday or Sunday or whatever.
mhm.
So thank you again for being here and for sharing your expertise. And I like to end my show with a guided meditation. And since we have been talking about money and prosperity, I think that's what we're going to focus on.
Awesome. I appreciate it.
So unless you're driving, if you're driving, please do not close your eyes. But if everyone else could please just sit back and relax and take a moment and close your eyes and just take a few deep but comfortable breaths. And as you exhale, just release any worries that you might have. Let your muscles relax. Feel a calm washing over your body. Visualize starting your day. Excuse me. Starting your day with a blank slate. And visualize as you're moving through your day positive experiences. If you have something difficult to do today, take a moment and envision the best possible outcome for that activity. Visualize your body filling with a golden light from the top of your head, coming down from the universe through the top of your head, and filling your body with a golden light. Removing all struggle, rewiring your thoughts to more positive thoughts, and imagine your body completely filled with golden light. As the golden light attracts positive experiences, positive cash flow, increases in prosperity in all ways, in kind and prosperous relationships, drawing to you healthy, nourishing food to fuel your body, to create health and wash away illness. Feel the energy flowing through your body freely and calmly as you step out into your day. Take a few moments to enjoy this calm, bright feeling. And when you are ready, open your eyes, and have a wonderful day. Thank you, everyone.